The two bills that we will be considering today are all essential to the deployment of high-speed broadband internet throughout the Commonwealth and part of the comprehensive package of broadband-related legislation that we started working on last session. Today's meeting is the culmination of several public hearings this committee held last session on how we can close our digital divide. However, more recently, we have all heard of the many challenges that our constituents have faced and will continue to face with remote working and learning. The bills on this agenda, combined with the legislation that we passed last session, are just the start of a multifaceted approach to closing our Commonwealth's digital divide. Now, more than ever, when our state and our nation are learning and working from home, we must make broadband accessible to all Pennsylvanians. I would first like to call up Senate Bill 341, a bill that I have sponsored. Senate Bill 341 is now before the committee. This legislation would modernize and streamline Pennsylvania's regulations that apply to our landline telephone companies. And many of the regulations which exist in our public utility code have been in place for decades, while at the same time we have seen sweeping changes to the technology and communications landscape, making these costly requirements unnecessary. This bill would permanently waive regulations from 52 PA Code Chapter 53, Sections 53.57 to 60, which are tariff filing requirements for incumbent local exchange carriers, Section 53.85, which regulates paper billing fees, and all of Chapter 63 and 64, which deal with telephone standards of billing practices for telephone services. The Commission would retain oversight as it pertains to customer complaints, 911, relay service, slamming and cramming, and universal service. The Commission would also be required to review its telecommunications regulations every 3 years and eliminate all regulations that are no longer necessary or in the public interest. It's interesting to note it's been well over 20 years since they have taken a look at these regulations. Pennsylvania's landline telephone companies represent less than 10% of voice subscriptions in the state and are subject to a strict regulatory framework. This puts them at a competitive disadvantage and diverts valuable resources away from critical investments such as broadband deployment. I want to be very clear. Senate Bill 341 is not full deregulation. Again, I will say it. Senate Bill 341 is not full deregulation. The obligations to provide voice service, rate regulation, and other quality of service metrics are all accounted for within this bill. This legislation takes a critical step forward in modernizing this decades-old archaic regulatory framework, which is no longer applicable in today's competitive environment.